It's my pleasure to give a welcome address on behalf of Madras Presidency Lawyers Forum for this 23rd virtual knowledge series by our respected sir, Mr. Siddharth S. Patel for this session. I am welcoming each and every one of the participants to this virtual meeting. Kindly attend the meeting and we have to enrich our knowledge. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity given to me by MPLF. Thank you so much.
May I now request Advocate Shogam to give the introduction about the speaker.
Thanks a lot, Manikandan sir, for the opportunity, and MPLF again for the opportunity for introducing my partner and a very dear friend of mine, Advocate Siddharth Patale. Siddharth is a practicing lawyer for more than 8 years now, and he has been practicing in Mumbai High Court, NCLT as well as DRT, and his main areas in interest of practice are Admiralty law, which we are fortunate enough to listen for the last time, and he also has a very rich experience when it comes to company matters, which he has been handling. And this time I would like to just mention to everyone that apart from being a lawyer, Siddharth also is a diehard music fan and is himself a tabla player, and he has completed his Madhyama Purna tabla exam. So from him I take the inspiration that apart from doing advocacy, you should be focusing on some other activity of interest also, which keeps you going in your field, in this field also. So with this I give it up to Siddharth to take us ahead and help us understand the provisions of order 39 of Code of Civil Procedure. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Soham, and thank you, MPLF, for giving me another opportunity to present a lecture before all these eminent lawyers, my brothers and sisters from Madras. Even as rightly pointed out by Soham, I have just a minuscule of experience of 8 years before all of you. And with this experience, whatever experience I have, I'm trying this time around to explain what Order 39 of CPC is and what is the importance of Order 39 in regular proceedings. Excuse me. So while starting, let's start with it. Order 39 of CPC 1908 deals with temporary injunction and interlocutory orders that any court can pass in any suit. The powers which have been granted to the courts, the trial courts or the high courts, to pass the interim injunction or the interlocutory order under the provisions of Order 39 is a discretionary power and is not not a mandatory power. When I say it's a discretionary power, we can find it out when the words used in the provisions are may and not shall. Thus, the use of word may is indicative that the intention of the legislation at the time of making this this order, their intention was that not to burden the judiciary of by passing an order of interim injunction or an interlocutory order every time an application for the same has been made before it. So it has it is a discretionary power which has been of the court, and the court uses it as and when it is when the court is satisfied that if the injunctions have not been granted or an interim injunction has not been given, the ends of justice will not be met, or there will be delay in the justice. Then and only then the court uses its discretion to grant injunctions under Order 39. So moving ahead or proceeding ahead with this topic, before we go in detail of Order 39, let's proceed with what an injunction means. Injunction has not been defined in CPC anywhere, but it has been defined in specific Relief Act. So injunction means an injunction is a specific order of a court for of the court forbidding the commission of a wrong or threatening or the continuance of a wrongful cause of action already begun. So, in other words, we can say that injunction means a restraining order that has been passed by the court, which either directs the party to do something or it restrains or abstains the parties from doing something. So, in Specific Relief Act, there are the types of injunctions we are aware of are defined in Specific Relief Act. The first which we come across is in section 34 of the Specific Relief Act, which is declaratory decrees, which in other words is a declaratory injunction, which the court has the power to pass when an application is made before it under section 34 of Specific Relief Act. Then other section which deals with injunctions is section 37, which is temporary injunction. A temporary injunction are injunctions which are to be continued till a specific time or until the further orders of the court, and they may be granted at any stage of the suit. So it is not necessary that Exhibit 5 only can be a temporary injunction, but even after that. Then what we come across is our section 38, which deals with perpetual injunction. A perpetual injunction is that it provides that a perpetual injunction may be granted to prevent breach of an obligation existing in favor of the plaintiff, whether expressly or impliedly, and also when defendant invades or threatens to invade the plaintiff right to the property or its enjoyment. So another important aspect of perpetual injunction is that a perpetual injunction can be granted can be granted by a decree made at the hearing and upon the merits of the suit. So a perpetual injunction is one which is given by the court at the end of the proceedings and not before that. Moving ahead, we have section 39, which deals with mandatory injunction. A mandatory injunction is an injunction which is to prevent the breach of an obligation that is necessary. It is necessary to compel the performance of certain acts which the court is capable of enforcing. The court may, in its discretion, grant an injunction to prevent the breach of to prevent the breach, and also to compel the performance of the requisite acts. So these are the types of injunctions which the courts deal with, and these are not dealt with or defined in the Code of Civil Procedure. These are only defined in the Specific Relief Act. So now let's move back to Order 39, the topic of the day. It's the Order 39 is specifically which deals with, as I've earlier said, it deals with temporary injunction and interlocutory orders. So the Order 39 for in total there are 10 there are 10 rules which govern which are the provisions of Order 39, and there is an additional Rule 11 which is for Bombay, that is for Maharashtra, that I will deal in the last part of it. So Rule 1 to Rule 5 of Order 9 of Order 39 deals with the temporary injunctions that can be granted, when can be granted, how it can be granted, what will be the course of action when a temporary injunction has been passed by the court, and if there is a breach of it. These are provisions are dealt in Order 1 to Order 5, and we'll go one by one now. So Rule 1, which says that the cases in which temporary injunction may be granted, again the word here used is may, so it is not mandatory on the courts that they have to pass an interim order. So it says that where in any suit it is provided, it is proved by an affidavit or otherwise. So here again, a temporary injunction can be passed in any suit before the court. It is not that it cannot be passed in a certain case or not. It can be passed in any suit. Further, it states that that any property in interim injunction can be passed against any property in dispute in a suit is in danger of being wasted, either being wasted, damaged, or alienated by a party to the suit or wrongfully sold in execution of a decree. So it protects the plaintiff or the person who is seeking justice or injunction, that he has to show to the court that the property against which he is or she is trying to get an injunction from the court, that it is in a grave danger of either getting wasted, being damaged, severely damaged, or being alienated by a person who is not supposed to alienate it, or it has been wrongly been alienated or sold. Further, clause sub-rule B says that the defendant threatens or intends to remove or dispose of his property with a view to defrauding his creditors. So again, here the court or the order 39 also takes care that if the defendant is threatening, or where a situation arises where the defendant comes to know that such and such suit is about to be initiated or has been initiated, or he knows that his creditors will be filing a suit against him, and with this knowledge, he tries to remove that property so that he could say that I do not have anything and I cannot pay. So in that circumstances, to protect the plaintiff, again under clause sub-rule B, the protection can be granted. Again, under sub-rule C, where the defendant threatens to disposes the plaintiff or otherwise causes an injury to the plaintiff in relation to any property in dispute in the suit. So there can be an instance that n number of properties may be challenged in a suit, and one of it can be sold off. So again, a single property can also be saved by making an application under Order 39 Rule 1. So here I would like to take a moment and say that Order 9 specifically deals with the provision deals with property only, and Rule 2 of Order 39 it specifically deals with a contract. What are the scenarios when an injunction can be passed when there is a breach of a contract? Whereas Rule 1 says that what are the cases in which a temporary injunction can be passed in relation to a property. So further, the court may by order grant a temporary injunction to restrain such act or make such other orders for the purpose of staying and preventing and wasting, damaging, alienating, sale, remove or disposing of the property, or dispossessing the plaintiff, or otherwise causing injury to the plaintiff in relation to the property in dispute in the suit, as the court thinks fit, until disposal of the suit and or further orders. So here again we see that the temporary order, the orders which are passed under Rule 1 are temporary in nature, and those are either till the disposal of the suit or till further notice. So it is still for a specific period of time, and it can be continued. Again, I would like to bring to the notice of this August forum that the amendment which has been carried out, the Part C which has been introduced in the year 1976, the intention behind it was that under Order 39, the primary concern with is that of preventing the property in dispute from getting destroyed or getting wasted. So that is the reason it was the amendment was bought. Again, then moving further, as I will now move to Rule 2 of Order 39, which is in respect of a breach of a contract, which says that before going to that, I just missed out on few things which I would like to mention here. Is that while when we are well aware, and that is a well settled law of this land, that when we are seeking an interim injunction, it is an equitable relief that we seek. And when we seek an equal relief, the thing is that we have to satisfy the court on few fronts, or specifically 3 fronts. That is, we first need to show that while there is an urgency as to the court should be heard, it is not mentioned everywhere, but we need, this is the normal procedure which is followed, that the court always asks, the first question is, what is the urgency and why should we hear you for an interim relief? After that, then we have to satisfy the court that a prima facie case is being made out in my favor, and that in the due course of the proceedings or the trial, the court is likely to pass an order in my favor. So this is the prima facie case that we need to make out before the court. After that, after satisfying the court on this, then we have to satisfy the court that there is a balance of convenience. And the last one, which that if the balance of convenience, in balance of convenience, we need to show that if the order is not passed, there will be losses which will be sustained by me and not by the other party. So it is necessary. Actually, what we have to show to the court is the inconvenience that will be caused when this temporary order or temporary injunction is not passed in the favor of the plaintiff. And furthermore, the last thing which we need to satisfy the court on is that the losses which will be occurred if the order of temporary injunction is not passed, that cannot be made good in monetary terms. So that is what we have to show them. And again, further, I would also like to point out one thing is that in citation AIR 2010 SC 296, it has been held by the Supreme Court that even though if a plaintiff is able to satisfy that that there is a balance of convenience and in his favor, and there will be an irreparable loss or injury will be caused to that person, but if he fails to show that there is a prima facie case in his favor, the injunction cannot be granted. It has been upheld in this citation, AIR 2010 SC 296. Furthermore, we can also say that a question might also arise whether what happens if injunctions have not been prayed or not been sought in the plaint, then will Order 39 be come into operation? It has been held, or is there any other way under which a court can grant an injunction? So it has been held in Indian Household and Healthcare Limited versus LG Household and Healthcare Limited, 2007 5 SCC 510, that even though if there is no mention of no pleadings as to injunction under Order 39 Rule 1 or 2, the court under Section 151 of CPC can also give and pass an interim order. So it says that it is now a well settled principle of law that that Order 39 Rule 1 is not the sole repository of the power of the court to grant injunctions. Section 151 confirms power upon the court to grant injunction if the matter is not covered by Rule 1 or 2 of Order 39. So now I'll come back to rule 2, which says that injunction to restrain repetition or continuance of a breach. Here it says, here again, as I've mentioned earlier, this rule deals with specifically about a breach in a contract due to which an injunction can be obtained. It says that in any suit for restraining the defendant from committing a breach of contract or other injury of any kind, whether compensation is claimed in the suit or not, the plaintiff may, at any time after the commencement of the suit and either before or after judgment, apply to the court for a temporary injunction to restrain the defendant from committing the breach of a contract or injury complaint of, or any breach of contract or injury of a like kinded arising out of the same contract or relating to the same property or right. Now here, one important thing to be noted is that the wordings which have been used, it is mentioned that when can this application be made? At any time after the commencement of the suit and either before or after the judgment. So if there is a breach of a contract and if a suit is initiated and there's a judgment passed, even after that the breach continues, then also an interim order can be taken under Rule 2 of Order 39. Further, Sub-Rule 2 says that the court may order grant of such injunction on such terms as to the duration of the injunction, keeping an account, giving security or otherwise as the court may thinks fit. So this is again on how and on what grounds it is needed to be given. Further, now let's consider a situation where an interim order has been passed. The defendant, it has been duly informed, and still the defendant does not abide by the rule, by the order of the court. Then what can the plaintiff, in whose favor the injunction has been passed, what is his remedy then? So for that, Rule 2A was inserted by an amendment by the Amendment Act 104 of 1976, which says that consequence of disobedience or breach of an injunction. In the case of disobedience of an injunction granted or other order made under Rule 1 or 2, or breach of any of the terms on which the injunction was granted or the order made, the court granting the injunction or making the order or any court to which the suit or the proceeding is transferred may order the property of the person guilty of such disobedience or breach to be attached, and may also order such person to be detained in civil prison for the term not exceeding 3 months, unless in the meantime the court directs his release. Sub-Rule 2 says, on no attachment made under this rule shall remain in force for more than 1 year, at the end of which, if the disobedience or the breach continues, the property attached may be sold, and out of the proceedings, the court may award such compensation as it thinks fit to the injured party, and shall pay the balance, if any, to the party entitled thereto. So, when there is a breach of an injunction or there is a willful disobedience of an order which has been passed by the court, the remedies which has been given under under Rule 2A are that either the property of the person who has willfully disobedient the order or there is a breach in the injunction, or the conditions which have been put forth in the order have been breached, then the recourse is available to the plaintiff is that he has to make an application under 2A to the court, and he has to get the property attached of the person who has made such kind of default or a breach of injunction. Or either he can be detained in a civil prison which cannot exceed a time of 1 year. Again, now we'll just pause for a minute and we'll consider a scenario as to what will happen if a very peculiar scenario, wherein and in a peculiar scenario, and what kind of remedy can be sought out under Rule 2A. Let's say that a suit has been initiated and an injunction has been granted in favor of the plaintiff. And it has been communicated to the other side, and there is a willful disobedience of that injunction. So the party who has been aggrieved files an appeal. Okay, because there is a appeal since there is a breach of breach of injunction. He files an appeal, and while that appeal is going on, what happens is the suit in which the injunction has been granted gets dismissed, and a separate suit, then the recourse is what is available is that he files an appeal because he has been aggrieved by the order that the suit has been dismissed. So in this particular circumstances, what will happen of the appeal which has been initiated under Rule 2A? So what will be the future of that appeal? According to a judgment of Privy Council, which I do not have the citation right now, but I'm well aware of that. I'll circulate that citation. It says that where there is a breach of an injunction or there is willful disobedience of an order which has been passed, it has to be punished. The person who has done the breach of the injunction or who has willfully disobeyed the order of the court, that person needs to be punished irrespective of whether the suit has been decided or has been disposed of or dismissed. So the gravity has been defined that an injunction passed by the court cannot be breached and the consequences thereof are grave. So I do not have the citation right now, but I'll be circling the citation on our group. So it is a very interesting case law which still exists, even though it is a Privy Council judgment. Moving ahead, now we'll go to Rule 3 of Order 39. Rule 3 says that before granting of injunction, the court to direct notice to opposite party. So it deals with the ex parte ad interim reliefs which have been granted by the court. Rule 3 deals with that. The court shall, in all cases, except where it appears that the object of granting the injunction would be defeated by the delay, before granting an injunction, direct notice to the direct notice of the application for the same to be given to the opposite party, provided that where it is proposed to grant an injunction without giving notice to the applicant, notice of the application to the opposite party, the court shall record the reason for its opinion that the object of granting the injunction would be defeated by delay and requires the applicant A to deliver to the opposite party or to send to him by registered post immediately after the order granting the injunction has been made, a copy of the application for injunction, and it should be along with a copy of an affidavit filed in support of the application, the copy of the plaint, and the copy of documents on which the applicant relies on. And the last part of it is that to file on the day on which such injunction is granted or on the day immediately following that day, an affidavit stating that the copies aforesaid have been so delivered or sent. So this is the normal routine which we follow when we get an interim application. So the order which is always passed at the end of every order is that the plaintiff to comply with the provisions of Order 39 Rule 3, which means that the court that the plaintiff has the plaintiff was successful in informing the court or satisfying the court that there is an urgency to be heard. Secondly, there is a prima facie case in the favor of the plaintiff. Third, there is a balance of convenience. And fourth, that an irrevocable loss will be caused. And when being satisfied on all these fronts, when the court hears out the application and sees that there is an actual threat to either to the property or due to a breach of contract, the plaintiff will be suffering, passes an ex parte ad interim relief in favor of the plaintiff. So after that, he has to make sure that he files an affidavit with the court wherein he states that as per the provisions of law and as per the direction of the court, the plaintiff has submitted or served upon the other side the copy of the application, the affidavit supporting it, the plaint which he relies upon, and the document on which he relies on. This is what briefly Rule 3 of Order 39 says. Further, there is Rule 3A. Now I have come across and so do all you will have, all the eminent members of this forum have come across that once an ad interim relief has been granted, the plaintiff either never turns out to conduct the suit again or is reluctant to conduct the suit because his intentions have been satisfied that he has got an injunction. So what does happens is that it causes an unnecessary, undue, lengthy process of trial, which actually defeats the whole purpose of the judiciary. So as we are aware that delay defeats justice and equity. So to avoid this situation, Rule 3A has been inducted in Order 39. It says that the court to dispose an application for injunction within 30 days. It says that when an injunction has been granted without giving notice to the opposite party, the court shall make an endeavor. It is shall make, so it is mandatory again on the court to make an endeavor to finally dispose of the application within 30 days from the date on which the injunction was granted. And where it is unable to do so, it shall record the reason for such inability. So by Rule 3A, it is mandatory on the courts that if a court has passed an ex parte order, it is mandatory that within 30 days from the passing of that order, the court should make an endeavor to finally decide that application, whether an interim order can be granted or cannot be granted. But at the same time, the court also has the liberty that due to paucity of time, if the court is not able, or want of time, the court is not able to decide that application within 30 days, by recording the reason for the same, the court can further grant some time for that. So this, so Rule 3A is a very important rule which can be initiated by a defendant or by the other party when an ex parte order has been passed against that party. Furthermore, Rule 4 of CPC of Order 39, the order for injunction may be discharged, varied, or set aside. So, under Rule 4, it says that any order for any injunction may be discharged or varied or set aside by the court on an application made thereto by any party dissatisfied with such order. So, as we are well aware that an interim injunction can be sought by either of the parties. It is not that only plaintiff has the right to seek interim orders. Even the defendant has the right to seek an interim order. The wording of Order 39 Rule 1 are specific about that. So that is why it is mentioned in Rule 4 that any party that has been dissatisfied by such an order which has been passed. Further, provided that if in an application for temporary injunction or in any affidavit supporting such application, a party has knowingly made a false or misleading statement in relation to a material particular and the injunction was granted without giving notice to the opposite party. So, I would like to say here that when the plaintiff does not come with clean hands before the court has the right to either discharge the status quo that has been granted, or vacate it, or set it aside, or verified it. There is a very well. Again, I'm not able to give you the citation right now, but I'll give you that. P. Chengalavaria. I'll give that citation, which says in which the Supreme Court has held that when court comes to the knowledge that the person who is seeking the relief of equity has come before it without clean hands, the court can throw him out of the court at any stage of the proceedings. So at any stage of the proceeding, when the court is made aware that the injunction which has been granted has been obtained on false or by misrepresentation, the court can directly throw out that plaintiff or that person out of the court at any proceeding, at any time of the proceeding. Further, Rule 4 further, the court shall vacate the injunction unless for the reason be recorded, it considers that it is not necessary to do so, to do in the interest of justice. So as I've mentioned earlier, that when court finds out it is necessary in the interest of justice that the person who has come with dirty hands before the court, who has sought injunction on false grounds, needs to be kicked out of the court then and there. Provided further that where an order for injunction has been passed after giving to a party an opportunity to be heard, the order shall not be discharged, varied, or set aside on an application of the party, except where such discharge, variation, or setting aside has been necessitated by the change in the circumstances, or unless the court is satisfied that the order has caused undue hardship to that party. So again, this proviso tells that it is not mandatory that the interim injunction orders can be varied, can be needs to be discharged or varied or set aside when an application is due. Again, since Order 39 being the discretionary power, the court, on hearing the other side, if it feels that it is not necessary to discharge the injunction order or vary it or set it aside, the court can maintain the continuity of that injunction with reasons to be recorded in it, or otherwise or it can be changed only when there is change in circumstances. Now, Rule 5. This is the last part relating to interim injunctions. Injunctions to corporations binding on its officers. So now, when an injunction is sought from a municipality or a municipal commissioner, it is not that it is only binding upon that organization. It binds the organization and every officer of that organization. This is what Rule 5 says. An injunction directed to a corporation is binding not only on that corporation itself, but also on all the members and officers of the corporation whose personal action it seeks to restrain. Now, now from Rule 6 to Rule 11 for Maharashtra and Rule 10 for rest of India, other than Maharashtra, it deals with interlocutory orders. So what are interlocutory orders? Interlocutory orders are orders which are not covered under Rule 1 to Rule 5 of Order 39. So an application made for production of document, an application made for say if you want to inspect an house or inspect records of the other party, these applications are made during the process of trial. They are not made at the time when the suit is initiated. So these applications are made during the pendency of the suit, and the orders which are passed under these applications are the interlocutory orders. Interlocutory in short means made during the course. So Rule 6 says power to order interim sale. It says that the court may, on an application of any party to a suit, order the sale by any person named in such order and in such manner and on such terms as it thinks fit of any movable property being the subject matter of such suit or attached before judgment in such suit, which is subject to speedy and natural decay, or which for any other just and sufficient cause it may be desirable to have been sold at once. So an instance which pops out in my head is that we have vegetable vendors going around, and PMC or the municipality comes and confiscates all their vegetables, and that is an offense which has been made by that vegetables vendor. So once this thing has been confiscated, either it has to be re-auctioned or it has to be sold off. So an application made under this provision can help, which helps the municipality in this instance to sell off the property as it will decay early. Rule 7, detention, prevention, inspection, etc. of the subject matter of the suit. It says that the court may, on the application of any party to the suit and on such terms as it thinks fit, A, make an order for detention, prevention, or inspection of any property which is subject matter of such suit, or as to which the question may arise therein. B, for all or any of the purposes of aforesaid, authorized by person who enter upon or into any land or building in the possession of any other party to such suit, and C, for all or any of the purposes aforesaid, authorize any sample to be taken or any observation to be made or experiment to be tried, which may seem necessary or expedient for the purpose of obtaining full information or evidence. So the best thing which I can correlate to this thing is that a few years ago, in a case where the subject matter was based on accounts and documents which were in possession of the other party. In that instances, we made in that instance we made an application to the court that we are afraid that the suit which we are seeking relief in, those are based on property, those are based on documents, and it is necessary that documents are be produced before the court. So we made application for production of document, and the reply was given, but it said that no, it is not necessary. So we made an application under Rule 7 of Order 39, seeking that we get an inspection of that documents, and that was granted. So under these provisions, inspection can be taken of the subject matter. So in this case, the subject matter was the documents which were relevant. Second, sub-rule 2, the provisions as to execution of process shall apply mutatis mutandis to person authorized to enter under this rule. Then we come to Rule 8, which says that application of such orders to be after notice, and so it says that what will be the effect after notice is being given. An application by the plaintiff for an order under Rule 6 and 7 may be made at any time after institution of the suit. So again, which I have mentioned earlier, that it is an interlocutory order, so it can be made anytime. It is not necessary that it has to be made at the inception of the suit, like we do for Exhibit 5. Sub-rule 2 says that an application by the defendant for an like order may be made at any time after the proceedings. So again, this Rule 8 says that an interlocutory order can be again obtained by either of the party. It is not that only a single party can make an application under Order 39, Rule 8, Rule 6 or 7. Further, Sub-rule 3 says that before making an order under Rule 6 and 7 on an application made for the purpose, the court shall, except where it appears that the object of making such order would be defeated by the delay, direct notice thereof to be given to the opposite party. So again, like in interim injunction case, only if the court thinks that an order needs to be issued. If the order is issued, the notice is issued, and that will delay the justice, then only then only the notice is not necessary to be given. If it thinks that the issuance of notice will not delay the justice, the notice can be issued. Rule 9, which says that when a party may be put in immediate possession of land, the subject matter of the suit. So now this specifically deals with the land and when can such land can be put into immediate possession of a party. It says that where a land paying revenue to the government or a tenure liable to sell is the subject matter of the suit. If the party in possession of such land or tenure neglects to pay to the government revenue or the rent due to the proprietor of the tenure, as the case may be, such land or tenure is consequently ordered to be sold. Any other party to the suit claiming to have an interest in such land or tenure may, upon payment of the revenue or rent due previously to the sale and with or without security at the discretion of the court, be put in immediate possession of the land or tenure. Here, the specific provision is made that when the government is, when the land is of the government, not the government of the land is of the government, or the tenure is there, and the person who is in possession of this land or the tenure is not paying the revenue which the government or the proprietor of this tenure needs to be paid, and is reluctant to pay that, then a suit can be initiated against that person, and other parties to the suit who are willing to pay the revenue which was due to the government or to the proprietor of the tenure and makes that payment, that person can be immediately put into possession of that property, that is the land or the tenure. And the court in its decree may award against the defaulter the amount so paid with interest thereon and at such rate as the court thinks fit, or may change the amount so paid with interest thereon at such rate as the court orders in any adjustment of accounts which may be directed in the decree passed in the suit. So, Rule 10 of Order 39, deposit of money, etc. in court, where the subject matter of the suit is money and some other things capable of delivering, and any party thereof admits that he holds such money or other things as a trustee of another party, or that it belongs or is due to other party, the court may order the same to be deposited in the court or delivered to such last named party with or without security, subject to the further discretion of the court. So when during the trial, when a party admits that it is holding some kind of money as a trustee or is liable to be paid, or is liable to pay an X amount to the other party, the court may direct that party to deposit it with the court and deliver it, or either deliver it to the person or a specific person. This is again the power of the court, which court can exercise under Rule 10. Now further, I'll mention Rule 11, which is only applicable to the state of Maharashtra, because that is an amendment of Bombay High Court, which says that in Order 39, after the existing Rule 10, the following rule is added. It says that procedure on parties defying orders of court and committing breach of undertaking to the court. So as we have seen in Rule 2A, again the provision 11 runs in parallels with Rule 2A. Here it says in Rule 11 it says that when the court orders any party to a suit or proceeding to do or not to do a thing during the pendency of the suit or proceeding, or where any party to the suit or proceeding gives any undertaking to the court to do or to refrain from doing a thing during the pendency of the suit or proceeding, and such party commits and default in respect of or contravention such orders or commits a breach of such undertaking, the court may dismiss the suit or proceedings if the default or the contravention or breach is committed by a plaintiff or the applicant, or strike off the defense if the default or contravention or a breach is committed by the defendant or the opponent. Again, after doing this, even there is another sub rule which says that the court may, on sufficient cause being shown and on such terms and conditions as it may deem fit, to impose, restore the suit or proceeding, or may hear the party in defense, as the case may be, if the party that has been responsible for default or contravention or breach as aforesaid makes amends for the default or contravention or breaches to the satisfaction of the court. So it says that sub rule 1 of rule 11 says what will be the consequences if there is a breach of undertaking, breach of or a disobedience or disobedience by the party. Sub rule 2 says that the court can reinstate the suit again if, to the satisfaction of the court, the other party shows the reason as to why it had happened. And if the court is satisfied with the reasons or the answers given, the court can reinstate the suit again. So with this, we come to an end of our Order 39 as contemplated in Code of Civil Procedure 1908.
Thank you, brother, for a wonderful session for the day. And let us go for the impression. May I now request Brother Sir Prakash to give the impression.
Good evening, everybody. Siddharth, it was really a very good session, and it was there is a free. We could feel a very free flow of your speech. Shows your enlightenment about the subject, and also your deep knowledge about the subject you have practiced. And regarding the inherent powers 151, that
Yes,
is
sir.
very that is if the court's practice will be of great assistance to the litigants. Even though there is no prayer for the Order 39, still the court has powers under 151. If court starts practicing this, takes law, which is the handmaid of justice, that is rendered properly, the litigations will come down.
Yes, sir.
That you have enlightened very fantastically. And the other aspect of regarding the verification of the confiscated goods by the municipality, that is really a classical example. I think you have prepared a lot for enlightening every one of us in various provisions of Order 39. It was like a free flow of water without any stoppage.
Thank you, sir.
Looking forward for more such sessions from you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Sir Prakash. May I now request Mr. Narayana to give the impression.
Thank you so much, Patale. Thrown a very good light on the entire subject of injunction.
May I now request Mr. Bhaskar Kesav-Murthy to give the impression, please.
Yes. Sir, you have explained the Order 39, Rule 1 to 10, and also the amendment of Rule 11 by the Maharashtra state in detail. And thanks to take such a class on behalf of the Madras Presidency Lawyers Forum.
Mr. Neelambar, you can give the impression, please.
Sir, good evening all, sir. Good evening, the PE team also. Hello.
Yes, sir, you're
Good
audible,
evening, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Sir, excellent lecture.
May I now request Mr. Ganesh Kumar to give the impression, please.
He has even the advocate, Mr. Siddharth, has gone through all the subclauses and the other subsections of Order 39, and the flow in which he has spoken reveals the fact that he has taken some pain of preparing for this lecture. And I also understand by the way he speaks that he is a very good practicing lawyer.
Request Jayanti Shah as to give an impression as a final one. Jayanti Shah, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here, sir.
You can give the impression, please.
Yes, sir. It was nice listening to such a topic, which is like a very important part of any case we are filing. It's not that like mostly it's not that it's like very common topic. Sorry, it's not that a topic which is not required in any of the cases. It's like whenever we file any civil cases, we normally go for any of the cases we go for injunctions or interlocutory applications. So thank you so much for enlightening us on this topic. It was great listening to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jayanti Shah. I may now request Jayanti K. Shah to give the vote of thanks as well as the next week's meeting's topic also.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this memorable occasion. Let me first thank all our members in the group for making this session a resounding success. First and foremost, I would like to thank our speaker, Mr. Siddharth, who is obliged to be our speaker for the day. My heartfelt thanks to all the guests for logging in and giving their valuable inputs and their impressions. Last but not least, all my member friends. I thank all my member friends for making this session a great success. Thank you.